In this presentation, I would like to suggest an establishment of a new social system called small meetings as one of the fundamental measures to prevent terrorism all over the world. This presentation, A Winning Strategy for the World, Change the World by Kaizen and Kenzen, received Award of Excellence in Saitama Research Institute, and this YouTube is part of it. I would like to suggest two concepts, Kaizen and Kenzen, we should apply to improve the world situation. Kaizen means continuous improvement process, and Kenzen sound. If you type Kaizen in search engine, you will find 200 million documents. This means Kaizen, originally a Japanese word used in our daily life and globally well-known management concept, is one of the powerful tools highly appreciated and widely applied in the world. When we apply Kaizen to business, we will see more money, but excessive desire for more money could destroy good society and happiness. Therefore, it is often necessary for us to ask, is my move or decision Kenzen or sound? Is my move or decision able to improve this organization or society over time? Not only to business, we can apply Kaizen and Kenzen also to sports, counseling for individuals, and medical care. These are excellent cases in my engagement as a manager or consultant. All of them have applications of Kaizen and Kenzen together with Japanese style of management, of which the ultimate goal is to appreciate value of human resources from long-term perspective and keep employment and develop business. I believe it is crucially important for us to agree on good concept by some image, and this slide shows an image of Kaizen. The horizontal axis is not just time, but a space or cross-section of an organization. When all concerned in the organization cooperate and collaborate with one another, the whole performance can improve by stepwise incremental chain reactions by all. This compares person-based perspective and value-based perspective in evaluation or consideration. Person-based and value-based perspectives are not opposite to each other. Rather, even with value-based perspective, you need to often consider elements of person-based perspective, because when you hire or train somebody, you need to look at the personal attributes, and also because human relation is important to do sales. By maintaining person-based perspective as elements into your value-based perspective, you can create value in the market, namely the objective of value-based perspectives. In person-based perspective or consideration, our bases will be individual human attributes, such as age, gender, position, educational background, and birth, all of which cannot be changed easily. One of the Japanese sayings, "If you hate a monk, you will hate even his clothes," shows our inclination that when we find somebody is not performing well, we tend to think that whatever he does, he is not good. As far as we keep this way of thinking, we cannot get rid of real root problem. Typically, in those countries of former Soviet Union still keeping communistic perspective in management, they tend to say he's bad when somebody gets injured on site, and they will not take an appropriate action or drastic solution. With value-based perspective, we focus on value for customers, and that in the market. One of the Japanese sayings, "Hate sins, but do not hate any person," means we take mistakes seriously, but we do not hate the person in charge who made a mistake. In this respect, we may call value-based management as management with love. A good point of value-based management is that we can take a drastic or ultimate measure for problems not to repeat any mistakes again. Let me explain a problem case of auditing by public accountants by applying value-based perspective. At the bottom left, you see a company with some fraud, such as Enron Corp, the financial reports are those recorded of the past activities, and corrections are not appreciated by the client. Therefore, there are temptations for auditors to ignore or overlook flaws to keep their clients. This means by approving some Ds in gray area, auditors receive fees by reciprocal dealing with the clients. If we judge the case by person-based perspective, we will only say that the auditors are bad. But some discussion based on value-based perspective can come up with a Kaizen solution of establishing another impartial body in between, as in this scheme. This body hires accountants who audit the clients. Not only in Japan, but also most countries in the world, currently they have this problematic scheme. Accordingly, we could easily anticipate fraudulent cases to come up here and there in the future also. If we keep value-based perspective, we can apply 5 whys and take a drastic action for solution. With 5 whys, we ask why 5 times to come to a root cause to identify a really workable solution. In this case, a driver was injured on side of block unloading. When asked why did it happen, he replied, because he was in a hurry. Next why prompted him to say, because the site manager was angry. With why again, he answered, because the blocks were not delivered yesterday. Then he got why not, because the delivery schedule sheet had a mistake. And the final why found the information from the project manager to the logistics was not well checked. As in this case with value-based consideration, an injury of the driver was caused not only by driver's careless fault, but is considered also as an opportunity to improve the organization effectiveness through Kaizen. This compares big meetings and small meetings. We find big meetings at board meetings in large companies, government strategy development meeting with many experts, discussion programs in TV by politicians, demonstrations, and general elections. TV discussion programs have several experts or politicians, but when we include the audience, we find similar characteristics to big meetings. When we have 20 participants or so at a 1-hour big meeting, each one can speak 2 to 3 minutes, and typically no questions can be asked. Politicians only talk and criticize one another in TV program, not allowing any questions by the audience, who feel it is no use after having watched the program. Lots of people participate in the demonstration, shouting freedom of speech, but with those big meetings alone, we cannot solve problems. To come to a real good solution for the problem of terrorism, for instance, with a long history and complex issues, we need to have small meetings by those participants with different perspectives who are willing to have deliberative discussion. Talking about standard general elections in the world, when the participants feel they cannot ask any questions and they cannot express their opinions in front of those with different opinions, they will develop misunderstandings and even hatred. The fact could be a cause to develop radicals and even terrorists. On the other hand, small meetings enable one-to-one discussion and allow questions to ask. The participants will have findings and learning experience. The important thing for all is to understand we have different opinions and perspectives depending on the experience in the past. We also need to recognize that the number of participants in big meeting is always quite small in the total population, and those participating in big meetings have no freedom of speech due to limited time for individual speeches. This slide is to show we need both small meetings and big meetings to come to a real workable solution. We don't only need demonstration without any opportunities to learn from one another, or big meetings without freedom of speech. But we also need small meetings for deliberative democracy as one of the official systems in both advanced and developing countries. We are having problems after problems in this world, such as ethnic conflicts, terrorism, tyrannical administration, famine, and poverty. Japan and other advanced countries continuously provide assistance to the developing world, but we sometimes want to ask ourselves why we are having so many problems. But also in the advanced countries, we see economic crisis, discrimination, widening wealth divide, unfair opportunities for education and medical care as political issues. We here define good politics as that to realize a wealthy, strong economy and culturally pleasant life for the people in the future. Having learned so many cases of advanced and developing countries, I have come to a conclusion that in order to develop a good, strong, sustainable political economy in the long term, there must be just one condition, that is a capable leader. When we have a capable leader deploying effective leadership and solid governance in the country, all things will be just following. A capable leader develops a right strategy and implements it effectively. Since an effective strategy always takes choice and concentration to identify an industry or a sector, or a few limited industries to have a focused policy. There will be some people who have to study a new field or make additional efforts, and others may lose financial aid or subsidy from the government. With a newly applied strategy to adjust the country to the changing environment, the people in general will have to endure difficulties and make efforts. It will take typically more than 10 years to do Kaizen in the national economy regardless of its size or status, such as a large country like USA or small countries such as Singapore or Ireland. Wherever it is, we will find outstanding figures as potential good leaders. Those leaders can take advantage of strong points of any economy of some region or country. However, after some time, even a capable leader will have person-based surroundings due to the human nature in the supporters who want to do grouping inevitably and irreversibly, irrespective of the leader's character. Accordingly, we always need an appropriate election to take place to keep a capable leader. An appropriate election does neither mean showy, expensive, festivity-like election, nor an election of high voter participation, but an election that can choose a capable leader. Now let me discuss the current election system in the world based on value-based perspective. Originally, the current election system was established more than a century ago in the West, and now we have similar systems, either direct or indirect, but mostly by ballot counting without deliberative discussion in a system proper all over the world. As a result, the characteristics of the current elections look like those of big meetings. However, when the election system was started, I guess they assumed there would be many small meetings. But in the modern world, almost all the voters do not know the candidates in person, but they just hear and read what they find in media. Most do not discuss political issues and only write one of the candidate names in ballot, which means election for them is voting only. In Japan's national representative election, 50 to 60% of all the eligible voters vote, and in local elections only 40 to 50%. But why so limited? It seems to me that all with voting rights do not feel like really participating in the politics by the current election system. I believe that there is no relation between warmth of shaking hands and his/her capability as a politician. But candidates are competing in how many voters shake hands with a candidate. A candidate, for instance, says, "I used to teach at a primary school, therefore I want to improve education." But all politicians have to keep balanced wisdom covering all fields, medicine, welfare, economy, industries, foreign affairs, and security issues. That means that knowledge in manifesto and flyers is not enough for the voters to make a decision in election. Some say the voting rate should be higher, but at polls there is no system for voters to study any records of candidates, their policy details, job performances, and career records. Since one vote has really a limited influence in the total, most just go to vote without thinking. In Japan, the competition for candidates over the politicians was only 1.2 in 2010. This means 12 candidates ran for 10 political positions on the average, and all candidates became politicians in more than 150 local governments. No election for a mayor was conducted in many regions. Some lawyers argue and prosecute the fact that disparities in voting values are too big, but I think that the opportunity disparity between those becoming candidates and those not being able to become candidates is a much bigger problem in our democracy. When I established a selection system to provide scholarships to non-Japanese candidates coming to universities in Japan, I suggested 1 out of 1,000 candidates, which means 0.1% is selected by a proper screening system. The reason being that the selected scholars will show excellent performances academically at undergraduate and/or graduate schools in Japan, and we do not have to take much care of them. Company presidents prefer to have minimum 3 candidates for one administration officer, but elections have only 1.2 times as candidates. Irrespective of the development stage of any countries, incapable leaders will have inefficient administration, corruption, internal conflicts, or wars because of inappropriate propaganda, inadequate measures, actions against emergencies, and possibly economic default. The consequence is that the people will have to suffer badly. To accept appropriate advice from experts, researchers, or academicians, leaders need to have wisdom and understandings at even a minimum level. In many cases, candidates have reciprocal relations with some big organizations to provide legally accepted support to the candidates, which voters cannot see. The fact brings the politics in the dark. In media, TV program producers seek high audience rate, and newspapers and journals a big number of circulations by making their products as sensational as possible, which may even kill life as politicians. Charlie Hebdo, a French satirical weekly magazine, was too insulting to pagans in my view, boosted its circulations more than 100 times as before, financially very successful. Regarding the Fukushima nuclear power accident, disappointing was the fact that the major causes for the accident were off-site lead power line because of inappropriate specifications and the levels of cooling pumps, all that should have been easily corrected by science math capacities of junior high school if combined with some hands-on risk management experience. I understand that there is some problem in the insurance coverage agreement between the power company and the government, but several hundreds of politicians were engaged in the nuclear power plant project, and many have visited the nuclear power plant in the past 30 to 40 years, but they were just useless in terms of accident prevention. In August 2014, it was found that a local politician produced a lot of false invoices and received reimbursements every month. This news became quite popular every day due to his funny behavior in speech. In the current election system, none of the voters or supporters can show their words of regrets. Therefore, we will see similar absurd cases repeatedly. Media basically love sensational news because they often have person-based perspective, focusing on individuals such as celebrities and say, that poor guy is a problem, enjoying a high viewer rate. They do not care to apply PDCA, namely plan, do, check and act, basics of Kaizen. In elections, there is no system at polls where voters' opinions are collected by the government. That is, no bottom-up information flow from voters to local assembly members, from whom no flow to central parliament members. After the nuclear power plant accident, the local people said plenty of budget was given to restore the local conditions, but why was so difficult to use because of its rigidity? So much unnecessary budgets. That is because there has been no bottom-up information flow in Japan. If we think about the current Japanese voters as having one of the highest cultural standards and education in the world, the current election system is not good enough to motivate them. The system itself is now totally obsolete. During the election period, there is no system for voters to provide opinions to the regional centers or the government, different from excellent global multinational companies where they engage all sections across the board in making their company strategies. When the current election system was developed and established in the West, the number of voters was limited to the first layer of the people or the landlords under the assumption that they have many small meetings to discuss politics, etc., before voting. In the modern world, however, with highly developed technologies and job divisions, most individuals with different backgrounds only develop their worries because they have no opportunities for Q&A or discussion in the regions. The most effective and only way to revive and strengthen any economies in the world, including Japan, is to establish a new system by combining bottom-up and top-down approaches as in successful large companies. By doing so, we can utilize wisdom and know-how from respective regions of each country. This slide shows changes in national strategy of Singapore over time. When Singapore became independent in 1965, its industries were fishery, agriculture, and some commerce, including narcotics trading. Due to high unemployment, many had nothing to do, just idling, so the government encouraged labor-intensive light industries such as textile. After the economy started growing, they invested in capital-intensive heavy industry. Later, the manufacturing industry was developed further to be the current high-tech manufacturing industry. They then focused on tourism to make Singapore a regional tourism center in Asia. This effort has brought Singapore the current highly recognized Singaporean Airlines and one of the biggest hub airports in the world. In the 90s, they attracted many financial institutes to make Singapore one of the most competitive financial centers in the world, followed by building large facilities to make it one of the biggest convention exhibition centers. After mid-90s, they established a concept of high-tech medical service center and recruited good medical doctors. Thereafter, they want to be one of the best academic research centers in the world. Many have called Singapore's political system as dictatorial single-party system. However, it is clear that Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's first Prime Minister, knew what to do as its leader, and he did what he should do. And Singapore's national income per capita exceed those of UK and Japan. Needless to say, a similar story for Ireland that used to be the poorest country in the Western Europe.